Clara and Daniel met in their final year of college, when the autumn wind carried golden leaves through the campus hallways. She studied literature, always walking around with a book in her hands and a universe in her eyes. Her soul was made of words, and her thoughts lived between underlined paragraphs and old quiet dreams. Daniel was her complete opposite, or so it seemed. An engineering student, he carried a calculator in his pocket and a heart that beat to the rhythm of logic, until the day Clara smiled at him for the first time. It was in that moment, ordinary, yet quietly magical, that everything began. In less than 2 years, they were married. Too young, some would say, but also intense, determined, and absolutely convinced that true love can overcome anything. They got married on a spring Saturday in the flower-filled garden of Clara's grandmother, deep in the countryside of North Carolina. The grass smelled of lavender, the chairs were set under the trees, and strings of lights danced between the branches like enchanted fireflies. The ceremony was small, intimate, family-centered. Childhood friends, teary-eyed cousins, uncles who cried before the wedding march even began. Everything tasted like home, like a beginning, like forever. When Clara walked in, with a simple, delicate dress and a small bouquet of wildflowers, Daniel couldn't hold back his tears. And she, laughing between sobs, said that's how it always is. The most beautiful moments in life always come with tears. The vows they exchanged at the altar were few, but filled with truth. They promised to build a family, to keep the house full of laughter, children's drawings on the fridge, toys forgotten on the living room rug. They promised to love not just each other, but all the future versions of themselves that would bloom from that love. They didn't know, not yet, that time, with its quiet and patient ways, would someday shift the course of their plans. But in that moment, beneath a pink and peaceful sky at dusk, everything was hope. Everything was love, and everything felt possible. The first years of their marriage were as gentle as morning light. Clara and Daniel slowly learned how to build a home together. The house was small, but full of life, filled with new Sunday recipes, plants that insisted on growing on the balcony, and soft music playing in the early hours while Clara made coffee. Every room had a story. Every wall held invisible frames of dreams and future plans. And the baby's room, oh, that room was the most dreamed of all, painted a soft blue, with a little white crib against the wall, and a cozy armchair bought on sale, where Clara would sit every night, even without a child in her arms. Months passed, then years, and the silence in that room began to grow heavier. Clara did everything the books told her to. She drank the teas, followed the cycles, counted the days. With each late period, her heart filled with hope. And with each negative test, a small part of her seemed to fade from within. Daniel tried to be strong. He said everything would be fine, that they had each other, that love was enough. But in the middle of the night, when he thought Clara was asleep, he would quietly get up and walk to the little room. He'd turn on the soft light and run his fingers along the edge of the crib, as if, through touch alone, he could summon a different future. There were 3 birthdays where Clara made the same silent wish as she blew out the candles. Dozens of appointments, tests, long waits in quiet rooms with cream-colored walls. The doctor always spoke gently, said it would be difficult, that it might never happen. But they listened like people who refused to accept the final word. Clara stopped sewing the decorations she had started. The little crochet rug remained unfinished, the yarn still caught in the last row. And the room slowly became a place no one entered anymore, like an altar of delayed promises. And still, they loved each other. But now it was a love that had to learn how to live in the spaces between. A love that cried in secret. A love that quietly asked, "Why not us?" One night, after yet another doctor's visit, Clara lay down in silence. Daniel wrapped his arms around her, pressed his lips gently to the back of her neck, and with a trembling voice whispered, "If you want to stop trying, I'll understand." She didn't answer. She simply held his hand tightly, like someone holding on to something they weren't ready to let go of. That night, there were no plans, no promises, just the two of them holding on to each other. Because sometimes, love is that, staying together inside the emptiness. It was a gray Saturday afternoon. Clara had gone to the mall alone, trying, like so many times before, to escape the emptiness of the house for just a few hours. She wandered slowly through the bright hallways, gazing at store windows that all looked the same. The world outside kept spinning. Mothers with strollers, children running between grown-up legs, laughter and cries that felt like they belonged to another life. She stepped into a shop without thinking. It was one of those delicate boutiques, filled with decorative trinkets, porcelain dolls, and handmade toys. And there, in the back of the store, lying on a little bed with an embroidered sheet, Clara saw the baby for the first time. It wasn't a real baby, but for a moment, it seemed like it was. The fine eyelashes, the slightly parted lips, the tiny hands curled as if holding the air, and the weight in her arms when the clerk placed the doll in her hands made Clara lose her breath. It was a reborn doll, one of those hyper-realistic creations, crafted to resemble a newborn in every detail. She knew that. She knew it was just silicone, paint, and fabric. She knew there was no heartbeat in that little chest. And yet, her eyes filled with tears. Clara left the shop with a shopping bag in her arms, her heart racing, and a strange feeling that she had done something she couldn't explain. She named him Ben, a name she and Daniel had chosen years ago, back when their dreams still felt alive. She placed the reborn doll in the crib, changed his tiny clothes, cradled him in her arms as if he were made of flesh and bone, and for the first time in a long while, she sang a lullaby. Daniel noticed something different in the silence of the house. He found Clara in the baby's room, holding the doll in her arms, her eyes glowing with a strange, fragile light. "It's just a doll, Clara," he said gently. She looked up at him and smiled, a delicate, almost childlike smile. "I know, but when I hold him, I don't feel that emptiness. He doesn't cry, he won't grow up. But he's here, He fills something inside me. Daniel stood at the doorway for a long moment. He heard his wife's voice and didn't know whether to cry or to embrace that fragile piece of illusion. He loved her. He loved her deeply. But seeing Clara like this wounded him in a way he couldn't describe. It was like watching someone slowly drown, while smiling as they sank. "Does it help? You?" he asked. Clara nodded, eyes brimming with tears. "It helps me keep going." That night, she rocked Ben in her arms until she fell asleep holding him. Daniel stood in the doorway, watching the two of them, the woman he loved, and the silent baby now resting in the place of the dreams that never came. He didn't know what was right or wrong. He only knew that, even in the ache, love still lived there. The days that followed Ben's arrival were different. The house, once silent and unchanging, began to breathe again, with a strange breath. Yes, artificial, but somehow alive. Clara started waking up early, like a mother. She gently changed the reborn doll's tiny clothes, warmed a bottle, even if he wouldn't drink it, and placed him in the stroller for quiet morning walks around the block. She greeted neighbors with a new kind of smile, a soft glow in her eyes, almost childlike. In the late afternoon, she would sit in the rocking chair of the nursery they had prepared years ago, gently swaying as she read children's stories aloud. Her fingers stroked Ben's head tenderly as if she could teach the doll the difference between real and pretend. Daniel watched all of it, his heart caught between love and fear. He wanted to see Clara happy. He saw her smiling again. But something unsettled him, an absence being filled by a presence with no life. "Love, maybe we could talk to someone," he suggested one evening, as Clara gently placed Ben in the white wooden crib. "We're talking now," she replied, without looking at him. Daniel sighed. He didn't press the subject. He knew. Trying to make Clara face her pain would only drive her deeper into the illusion. Over time, Clara began going out more. She took Ben to the market, to the park, to the cafe she used to visit with her friends. Some people looked at her strangely, but she didn't mind. Others, moved by the sight, believed he was a real baby, and would ask if he was her first child. Clara would just smile and say, "He's the most long-awaited gift I've ever received." The house changed, too. Diapers stacked in the bathroom corner, a diaper bag hanging on the door, stuffed animals scattered across the sofa. The once empty crib now held blankets washed with lavender softener, and a mobile of stars gently turning above Ben's unmoving head. One night, Daniel found Clara sitting on the hallway floor, crying softly with the doll in her arms. "I know he's not real, Dan," she whispered. "But when I hold him, it doesn't hurt as much. He lets me be a mother, even if it's just for a little while." Daniel knelt beside her. He didn't say a word. He just held her in a long embrace with Ben between them, as if, in that moment, just that moment, they could pretend together that they had a family. Time didn't stop. But for Clara, the days began to revolve around empty bottles, hand-washed baby clothes, quiet outings, and lullabies sung into silence. And Ben became more than just an object. He was now an entire chapter in the story Clara and Daniel were never able to write. It was an ordinary morning. Clara had just left Ben in the crib, as she did every day, gently tucking in the blankets and kissing his forehead as if to say, "Wait for me. I'll be back soon." In the kitchen, Daniel was making coffee. The radio played a soft 90s song, the kind that only seems to exist in happy memories. They sat in silence, but it wasn't a heavy silence. It was the kind that comes after a long rain, a silence soaked in weariness, but also in peace. "I scheduled it," Daniel said quietly. "What?" Clara asked, reaching for her cup. "The appointment. That last chance. The doctor said there's a new treatment. Experimental, but promising." Clara smiled, tenderly, with a hint of fear. She had learned to be cautious with hope, but she also knew that with Daniel, it was always worth trying. One more time. The treatment was long. 1 month, then 2. Appointments, tests, injections. Good days, painful days. At times, Clara nearly gave up, but Daniel held her hand tightly, and she kept going, for the promise, for the dream they had shared, for the name they had chosen before they were even married. On a gray Tuesday, they returned to the clinic, just another routine checkup. Clara sat on the exam table, Daniel by her side, neither expecting much. The doctor entered with a smile, and before she even spoke, her eyes said everything. "Clara, Daniel, you're pregnant." Silence. For one long second, the world stood still. No sound, no thought, only Clara's eyes, filling with tears like a dam breaking. She brought her hand to her mouth, as if trying to hold back the emotion rushing from her chest. Daniel stood frozen, then rose slowly, as if afraid to wake from a dream. "Are you sure?" he asked, voice trembling. "Absolutely," the doctor replied. "There's already a little heartbeat." Clara sobbed, and Daniel embraced her right there, the two of them laughing and crying, wrapped in a feeling only those who've waited for a miracle could truly understand. That night, back home, Clara walked into the quiet nursery where Ben lay. She gently touched his soft head and whispered, "You were always my first mother's love. Now you'll have a little brother or sister to share this heart of mine." Daniel stood in the doorway, watching the scene with tenderness. For the first time in years, he saw Clara whole again, not just surviving, but truly living. Hope had returned, not like a storm, but like a warm breeze drifting through an open window. At dusk, carrying the scent of something new and good. And this time, the nursery would no longer be just a setting. Soon, its walls would echo with newborn cries, arms would be full, and the names long kept in silence would finally be spoken out loud, by a voice they had only dreamed of. The months passed slowly, as if time itself wanted Clara to savor every second of this long-awaited journey. The positive test was now a sonogram pinned to the fridge. The cramps from the early months had given way to gentle kicks. Soft at first, then stronger. Clara felt them like little "I'm here" messages from the baby growing inside her. Daniel, as always, was her anchor. He wouldn't let Clara carry bags or worries. At night, he'd rest his hand gently on her belly and whisper to the baby, as if rehearsing for fatherhood. Each morning, Clara woke up more radiant. Rosy cheeks, eyes full of life. She smiled at the nursery, once quiet and still, now filled with sound and color. A new crib beside Ben's, stuffed animals in every corner, tiny clothes that smelled of fresh cotton and hope. But there was something delicate in the air. Ben was still there, sitting in his little chair, glass eyes ever watchful, carefully dressed, hair brushed like he truly was the firstborn. Clara still kissed him goodnight, still called him my boy, still found herself telling him bedtime stories. Daniel noticed everything, but he said nothing, until one rainy afternoon, while Clara was packing her hospital bag. "Love," he said gently, stepping closer. "Have you thought about how things will be once the baby arrives?" Clara paused. The tiny blue dress hung in the air for a second. "In what way?" she asked without looking at him. "In everything. In us. In you. In how Ben will fit into all of this now." She was quiet for a moment, then folded the little dress and placed it in the bag. "I have thought about it," she finally said, her eyes resting on the reborn crib with a gaze full of tenderness and ache. "Ben saved me. When I didn't know how to be a mother anymore, he allowed me to still feel like one. Even without truly existing, he gave me something to love." Daniel stepped closer and gently wrapped his arms around her. "I understand, and I'm grateful to him too. But now, you're going to hold our baby in your arms. You'll hear the cries, feel the warmth, see those eyes open. You'll finally have everything you've dreamed of." Clara nodded, biting her lip to hold back tears. She knew Daniel was right, but she also knew the heart has corners reason will never reach. Ben was more than a toy. He was a chapter of their story, a shelter, a bond. He didn't need to be erased. He just needed a new place. That night, Clara moved Ben to a small sofa beside the crib. She held his soft hand and whispered, "Thank you for being my child when no one else could. Now you'll be a big brother, okay?" And when Daniel walked into the room carrying a new blanket, he found them just like that. Clara, her belly round and full of life, sitting between a crib that waited for the future and a doll that carried their past. In that moment, everything felt at peace. Two cribs, two loves, one mother's heart. The sky woke up pink that Thursday morning. Clara always said the world had a way of announcing beautiful things, and that gentle dawn seemed to whisper good news. At 9 months and 1 week, every twinge, every ache made her heart race. But this time it wasn't just a twinge. It was a real contraction, firm, like a hug tightening from the inside out. "Daniel," she called, her voice trembling between pain and surprise. "I think it's time." It took him exactly 2 seconds to go into super dad mode. The hospital bag was packed, the car filled with gas, the documents ready. And yet, somehow, his feet didn't seem to find the ground. Clara laughed, even through the pain, watching him fumble with the car keys in one hand and his untied shoes in the other. At the hospital, the white hallways stretched too long. The air smelled of alcohol and expectation. A soft beeping echoed from the monitor, the baby's heartbeat, fast and steady, as if he too was eager to meet the world. The hours that followed were a mix of deep breaths, tight hands, and silent glances. Clara felt pain rise and fall like waves. But behind every tear, there was strength. The kind she had grown over years of waiting, of treatments, of shattered and rebuilt dreams. Daniel never left her side. He whispered words only they could understand. He kissed her forehead with reverence, as if he knew he was witnessing a miracle. And then came the moment. The room filled with light and motion, nurses, doctors, instruments. And in the center of it all, Clara, lying down, sweating, crying, fighting with her own body. And Daniel, holding her hand so tightly it felt like he'd never let go. "Almost there, Clara." "Just one more push," said the doctor, eyes shining. Clara screamed, not only from pain but from courage, from release, from love. And then, the cry, a sharp, powerful, beautiful cry, a sound that seemed to break every silence her soul had ever known, a cry that said, "He's here, alive, real, son." It was a boy. Clara couldn't speak. Tears fell freely, unstoppable. Daniel kissed her hand. Again and again, his eyes red like never before. "Our son," he whispered. "He's here, Clara. You did it." When the nurse laid the baby on her chest, the whole world seemed to pause. Clara held him with a fierce gentleness, like someone holding a star, like someone protecting a precious secret. "Hi, my love," she whispered. "I waited so long for you," Daniel cried. And cried. The kind of tears that don't need explanation. They only need to be felt. That night, the hospital room was silent. Only the baby's soft breathing filled the space. Clara slept with him in her arms, and Daniel watched them like someone guarding treasure. Ben, the reborn doll, stayed at home, quiet on the nursery sofa. And for the first time, Clara didn't feel guilty leaving him there. Because now, her heart was whole. Not because one love replaced the other, but because one made room for the other to be born. The afternoon sun bathed the little house in golden light as Clara, Daniel, and the baby finally arrived home. The door opened into a world that had, for so long, been only a dream, a hope, a wait. Every step inside that house now felt like a confirmation. Home had taken on a whole new meaning. The nursery, which had once held Ben, the reborn doll, was quiet, yet somehow fuller than ever. Clara walked to the small couch where the doll used to rest. She picked him up gently and looked into his glass eyes, the same eyes that, for years, had been her comfort. "Thank you, Ben," she whispered, "for being my first son, my refuge, and my love when I needed it most." Daniel stood beside her, smiling with relief and tenderness. "I think it's time to put Ben away with care," he said, pulling her into a hug. "You deserve to live this new chapter fully, just with him." Clara nodded, feeling a mix of sadness and peace. The decision to put the reborn doll away wasn't a bitter goodbye. It was a bridge to the present. Ben wouldn't cease to exist, but would have his special place while their real baby grew in their arms. In that moment, Daniel felt a new kind of joy, a joy like no other, made of hope, love, and the future. "We're ready," he said, looking at Clara, "ready to be a complete family." The days that followed were filled with discovery. Clara learned to understand each cry, each smile. Daniel, the devoted father, changed diapers with care and made plans for the future, now as a family of 3. And Ben? He was placed gently inside a fabric-covered box and stored in the nursery closet, tucked away with respect and gratitude, because in that home, 2 loves lived side by side, the past that had taught them how to love, and the present that would unite them forever. The alarm had barely gone off when Clara was already awake, gently rocking her little one in sleepy arms. The silence of the house was broken only by the baby's soft sighs and the faint creak of the wooden floor beneath her careful steps. In the kitchen, Daniel was making coffee with a tired but loving smile. He could hear the distant cry of the baby and knew it was time to step in. "Clara, I need to change his diaper," he said, entering the room with care not to wake the baby fully. She handed him over, and the little one, as if understanding the change of arms, calmed down in his father's embrace. The rhythm of the house began to change, guided now by small needs and great discoveries. The warm baths, the sweet scent of baby powder, the nights interrupted by cries that, little by little, began to make sense. Diapers piled up, drawings on the fridge gained color, and the house, once so quiet, now pulsed with life. Clara felt both exhausted and complete, as if each moment of fatigue were a brick in the building of her new world. Daniel, always observant, noticed how each glance they shared was a silent promise of love and protection. The boss days blended into a gentle dance between sleep and waking, fear and courage. And there, in the midst of it all, something greater than themselves was growing. The family they had always dreamed of, made of simple details and eternal moments. The first months with the baby brought more than smiles and sleepless nights. They brought lessons Clara and Daniel never imagined. Some mornings, Clara woke up with a heavy heart, too tired to smile. The sleepless nights felt like a constant test of patience. The baby's cries, sometimes desperate, made her doubt herself. Daniel, in turn, struggled with a sense of helplessness. He wanted to help, wanted to get everything right, But he knew some things could only be learned with time, yet, in the middle of tears and doubts, there were precious moments, like the baby's first smile that lit up a rainy afternoon, or the first time he tightly grasped Clara's finger, as if to say, "I'm here, Mommy." They learned to share responsibilities, to lean on each other during the hard moments, to laugh at their little mishaps, because deep down, they knew every challenge was making them stronger, more united. And it was along that path, one built with love and perseverance, that their family grew, not just in numbers, but in hope and faith. Each day became a new page, written with courage, tenderness, and so much love. The house was dressed in color and joy. Balloons hung from the ceiling, colorful ribbons decorated every corner, and a large table full of sweets and treats awaited the guests. Clara and Daniel could hardly hide their smiles. Their baby was turning 1, and the party was a celebration of a dream finally come true. Friends and family filled the garden with laughter and hugs. Children ran around, adults chatted cheerfully, and the sunlight filtered through the trees, creating the perfect backdrop for such a special day. At the center of it all, the little birthday boy, dressed in a light blue romper, watched everything with curious eyes, while Clara softly sang to soothe him. Daniel held the camera, capturing every moment, the first slice of cake, the tight hugs, the radiant smiles. But when the party began to quiet down, Clara went to the room where Ben, the reborn baby who had once been her silent refuge, was kept. She opened the box carefully, caressed the soft silicone face, and a sigh slipped from her lips. The doll's gaze looked almost alive. For a moment, Clara felt a chill down her spine. That old love, that piece of the past, held secrets no one else knew. Was Ben just a doll, or was there something more hidden behind that silent presence? Daniel appeared at the door, calling her back to the party. But Clara, still looking at the reborn baby, felt that the story wasn't over yet. Because sometimes, the deepest mysteries live quietly, right in the heart of our home.